big enough to space out, so.
Good evening and welcome to a special meeting of the Oak Harbor City Council. Today is July 14. It is 6 p.m. in the evening. I'd like to call the meeting to order. Tonight, I'd like to thank you, the community, and to our staff for cooperating with the changing requirements to prevent the spread of COVID-19. For example, at city facilities, we are requiring staff and visitors to wear masks and practice physical distancing. Human Resources Director Emma House will provide more updates later in the meeting. Council and the majority of staff will continue to participate remotely in order to reduce the number of people in the room. If you cannot wear a mask, I encourage you to watch the meeting via YouTube or Channel 10. You can watch it live via YouTube. So I'd like to begin then this evening with a roll call. And I'll start with Mayor Pro Tem Munns.
Here.
I see she's here. Councilmember Hizon.
Present.
Councilmember Servadius.
Here.
Councilmember Wassinger.
Here.
Councilmember Wiesner.
Present.
And Councilmember Mack.
Here.
So we have 6 for 6. In addition to City Council and staff, tonight we have a representative. In fact, it is Mr. Grant Weed from the Weed, Grafstra and Associates Cities Consulting Attorney Firm. Grant is in attendance, I hope. Welcome, Grant. So we have tonight, I believe, 3 items on our special meeting agenda, and I would like to ask for any changes or additions at this time. Otherwise, the agenda will be approved as presented. Seeing no changes, we will move forward then with Resolution 2021 awarding the North Whidbey Island Small Business Relief Program grants. And I believe that our City Administrator Blaine Oborn will take that one.
All right, I'll hold for the slide to come up. So while we're doing that, I just want to we have 2 people in the audience. Thank you for joining us with masks and 6 feet apart there. And at least one of the recipients is happy to be one of the awardees. So we're happy to help you, and thank you for being in the audience. And thank you for your desire to receive this funds. And certainly we want to help you. So let's go to the next slide here. I think certainly a lot of work from our selection committee, 6 people who vetted 83 applications, I believe. So I'll kind of figure out how we came up with the split as I explain this, but certainly a thanks going out to them for helping us with the reviewing. So we appreciate that. And then we'll go ahead and go on to the timeline here. Keep on updating that. July 14th, we're going to award our first group. After vetting it through the selection committee, there was 69 applicants that were all ready to go to award, and so rather than hold up, then there was about 14 that needed some more reviewing and more vetting, so we divided it up into 2 groups, and so we're going to recommend approval of the 69 applicants that were all ready to go and had applications that didn't have any required any additional vetting. And then we'll start the award process real soon after that. And then not sure exactly when we'll be ready for the other 14 that we're vetting. There may be less than that because some of them may withdraw or not be eligible. So that's when we'll do the second group, is probably either later July or early August. And we'll bring back the second group for approval once we finish that vetting process and get a determination of how much is eligible with those other applicants. Moving on, so I mentioned 2 groups of recipients. We're talking about group 1 tonight. for a total of $588,453. 69 applicants. Going on to the next slide here, just a little recap here. It leaves with the 677,883 we had available for the small business grant relief program. We have a balance of 89,430. The total eligible is a little higher, but I think after we are requested, the remaining is a little higher, but I think after we're vetting through this, I think the actual eligible needs will be really close to our remaining funds, but we're still working on verifying those. And then it's just kind of close things up to move us along. So if the council goes ahead and approves this tonight, we will be the first of the 5 groups that are in the county that are doing this award program for small business relief. And so I would recommend that the council go ahead and I'll answer any questions. And if there's no questions or after the questions are answered, I hope you would move to approve Resolution 2021, approving the CARES Grant Selection Committee awards to, it's actually 69 applicants that qualified for a total of grant awards in the amount not to exceed $588,453.
Okay, so we'll turn to the council for questions or input or motions. I see Councilor Wiesner.
Thank you, Mayor. I just wanted to thank staff and thank Blaine for specifically for staying on the ball on this thing. We are going to be the first out of anybody here in the area that's going to actually award any money. And as we all know, it's been very important to get this off the ground quickly. And certainly staff took the ball and ran with it. We ran into some challenges early on, but in the end, you know, we're going to be out there. We're going to get this money into the hands of our local businesses that dearly need it. And I just, again, can't thank staff enough.
Thank you, Councilor Wiesner. Councilor Wassinger.
Hi, yes. I was able to set in on one of the last meetings last week with the committee members and sort of talking through their vetting process. And I just wanted to say that I feel really comfortable. I feel like those committee members really sounded like listening in, and I was just there to sort of represent the council and be an ear, that they vetted all of those applications really well. It seems like there's a very prescribed method to go about this, and it sounded like they all took it very seriously and did their scoring well. And I thank them for their time. You know, it wasn't a lot of time for me to sit in and listen, but I feel like they put in a lot of work and a lot of time. So I thank them, and I feel very comfortable moving on with this first list. And it sounds like even those that did apply, that maybe they had further questions, making sure that expenses were qualifying expenses was a big deal. It sounded like we're gonna work through that too, and I feel really comfortable with the process. So thank you. I support this.
Thank you, Councilor Wassinger. Thank you. Any other input or questions? Councilor Wiesner.
Thank you, Mayor. For lack of any other questions, it would certainly be my honor to move to approve Resolution 20-21, approving the CARES Grant Selection Committee award to the 69 businesses that qualified for a total grant award not to exceed $588,453.
Second.
So we've got a motion and a second that reads not exactly like the recommended action. The motion reads 69 businesses, which is the correct number. Otherwise, it's the same as the recommended action. Motion made by Councilor Wiesner, second by Mayor Pro Tem. Any other input or questions? Seeing none, all in favor say aye. Looks like we've got 5.
Mayor,
Councilor Servadius.
Yep, I'm going to abstain. I'm one of the president of one of the receiving organizations, so I'm going to abstain from voting.
Okay, so we've got, that passes, 5 yeas and 1 abstention. So thank you very much for that. We will move on then to our next item of business, and that is a review of applicants for vacated council member position number 7. So I'd like to then go back to City Administrator Blaine Oborn.
All right, I will start you off with this. I have a list here. We'll kind of bring up our slide here that you can see. So hard to tell how many applicants we received, so I think that's why we had this meeting tonight. There could have been 20 and you wanted to vet it, so we ended up with a list of 4 eligible applicants, and here's the list here of the applicants. From these applicants, the council should determine which applicants you wish to interview at your regular meeting on August 5th. And then interesting note here that was brought up here by Mayor Pro Tem Munz. The term is a little bit shorter than the normal term because this is an appointed position. As soon as the replacement for this is elected, then that person takes office. So this term would be through November 21 up until the certification of the position for 7 in the next election. So little twist in that, and we thank the MRSC and our city attorney. Did I get that right? He's also here too. So
yes, when a position is vacated, the vacancy is filled by an appointment until the next election, which for council members is in odd member years. So that the information you were provided is correct.
yeah, so we assume sometime in November 2021 would be the certification. So as soon as that election's certified, then the new person takes office a little bit ahead of the other 3 council members that'll be up for election. So interesting twist there. So I guess it's up to the council whether you want to interview all 4 or parts of those, but we're all set. You just give us the direction and we'll have them lined up for the August 5th meeting.
Councilor Hizon.
I'm sorry, if I had my hand up, that was a mistake.
Oh, okay. Councilor Servadius.
Thank you, Mayor. Also, having gone through this process before, I don't remember how many applicants. There were quite a few more when I went through it, but I would say we bring all 4 in. You can read a resume and an application, but I also appreciate hearing them speak and getting a chance to know them a little bit better. And since there's only 4, I'd be okay with bringing all 4 forward for an interview.
Thank you, Councilor Servadius. Councilor or Mayor Pro Tem, yes.
Thank you, Mayor. I too, there's only 4. You can only tell so much what's written on the paper, but I think it would be better to meet them in a sense in person to hear them speak. Then you find out a little bit more information, and there's only 4, not 19. So I would like to see all 4 be interviewed in August at our meeting.
Okay, thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. Councilor Wiesner.
Thank you, Mayor. I too would be more than happy to spend the time to talk with all 4. I think it's great that they're willing to step up and serve, and they certainly deserve the interview, I think. So I'm more than happy to support all 4.
Councilor Mack, I think you were next with your hand.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. I would support having all 4 with an interview as well. I think that'll work just fine. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Councilor Mack. Councilor Wassinger.
Yes, I agree. I would support interviewing all 4, and I thank them for applying, and I look forward to asking them questions and listening to them. And so, yeah, I would certainly support taking the time to interview all 4.
Okay. That would be pretty much, that's a majority, so I think we've got our marching orders. Great. We'll see them, invite them all to the first meeting next month, right? August?
August, it's on the sheet there, August 5th.
August 5th. Okay, great. So we will move on to the last item on our agenda, Human Resources, recent staffing changes update. And we have our Human Resource Director, Emma House, with us tonight. Hi, Emma.
Good evening, Mayor. Good evening, Council. Thank you for having me. I do have a slide presentation, so I will wait for that to go up on the screen. Okay, great. So tonight I am here to give you an update on our recent staffing changes. And so we can go ahead and start the next slide. I figured it would be best to give you a little bit of an introduction about HR and our Human Resources Department. It's been a while since I've been in front of council. So on the next slide, I wanted to just give you some brief information about myself. I've been with the city now for 4 years, and it has gone by very fast. There's been a lot of changes that have happened in 4 years, and it's been very exciting to be a part of those. I did come to the city with some great qualifications and certifications. And during my past employment, I was actually a primary recruiter in many of my previous roles. And I was actually one of the last hires that the city has done where we used an outside recruitment firm. There was actually a pretty large expense using a recruitment firm. So hopefully, since I've been on board, we've seen a decrease in those costs, and we've brought a lot of recruitment back on site in-house. The next slide gives you a little bit of information about Kim. Kim is our HR generalist, and many of you have probably seen her or talked with her. She's been with the city since 2013. I'm very excited for Kim because when I came on board, we had a goal to get her certified with IPMA, and she was able to obtain that very quickly and easily. And she recently was able to also obtain her SHRM certification. So congratulations to Kim. Thank you so much. She is our Chief Civil Service Examiner or Secretary for Fire and Police. They have a much more detailed recruitment process, which involves a lot more tracking and calculation of scores. And also we have a Civil Service Commission that Kim leads for us. So in most of our recruitment, I have asked Kim to be the lead, and she has done a great job at assisting all of our departments in that role. So going on to the next slide, some quick updates about HR. We recently moved. We were located downstairs in City Hall, and now we are located upstairs. We're actually right next door, connecting to council chambers. So please be sure to stop and say hello to us. Thank you so much to all of our teams and facilities and throughout City Hall for making the move happen. There's been a lot of moving parts, and it's been a lot of people that we really couldn't have done it without. So thank you so much. As the mayor mentioned in the beginning of the meeting, COVID-19 has been our world since March. It has been a difficult time for everyone in many different ways. Financially, emotionally, physically, it has been stressful. I really can't say enough about how great our employees are. They have continued to work. They have continued to provide services. There has been very few complaints. We have seen departments restructure schedules, create safe environments. There's been a lot of moving parts to make sure that we're creating the safe distances, the 6 feet of space. My little motto and slogan has kind of been grace in space, to make sure that we're being graceful with our staff, being accommodating because this is such a difficult and different time, but also that we're giving them the space to really make sure that we're feeling like we are being safe in this new world. The masks has been a really big challenge, and we will continue to work through all of the changes as they come up. So thank you to all of our employees. Our wellness committee is continuing to meet. They are really hopeful that we might be able to do some sort of delivery or pickup for our summer picnic, and we're still hopeful that we might have an all-hands meeting. We hope you enjoyed your roll of toilet paper that you were given during this time of COVID-19. So those are our recent updates from HR. And let's see, this is kind of a list of all of the services that HR should be providing to our employees and to our community when it comes to candidates and talking about different benefits that we offer to our workforce. Today, we are going to focus on recruitment and workforce planning. So this is actually a list that's on our website. And some of these areas I kind of assign Kim to focus on, and others I take the lead with. But recruitment and workforce planning, that is our focus. So to talk about that, we can go to the next slide. And I can't really talk about recruitment or our workforce without talking about NeoGov. When I came on board, Kim said to me, we really need to make some changes, and I listened, and NeoGov was what we decided was the best solution. NeoGov is currently serving more than 6,000 public sector and education organizations, and they are the lead right now for recruitment, selection, and also managing your workforce. So NeoGov is kind of our solution, our tool for all of our recruitment needs. And to kind of talk about staffing changes here at the city, it wouldn't help unless I showed you what NeoGov is doing for us. So we can go ahead to the next slide. We are using it for recruitment, as I mentioned, and there's two different sides to recruitment. There's kind of the background of HR and how we get everything approved and processed. And then there's the front side, which is called OHC, or our online hiring center. And that's what our managers and directors all use to find the talent that they're looking for to fill their positions. In that recruit module, it comes with governmentjobs.com. And that is basically our jobs engine for posting on websites and getting it out there for advertising. And with the recruitment module, it comes with an onboard, offboard feature to help us kind of develop our culture and share everything that we want to share about the different departments that our employees are going to be working in. So I'll give you a little bit more information on those next slides. And then you probably have heard that we've transitioned our performance evaluations, and that's all now done through NeoGov through their Perform module. And we've actually transitioned a lot of our learning now to be online through their Learn module. The Learn module has become a completely helpful tool during this time of COVID-19. We were able to assign courses quickly and easily, and people could complete them from home or from the office. And NeoGov has been great about coming out with COVID-19 courses as quickly as they can, which has been extremely helpful. And then the Manage module is kind of where all of your recruitment and your workforce management comes together in one. And we've been working with eForms recently to kind of create all of those paper forms for benefits as electronic forms. And in the future, we hope to bring NeoGov forward to add HRIS, which would be tying everything into one for a human resources information system, is what HRIS stands for. So that's just a quick overview of all of the things that NeoGov can do and is doing for us. We've been slowly adding pieces as we can. Okay, next slide. So now to get into your staffing changes. Go ahead and go again. So hopefully during the workshops, I have been providing our city administrator's report through Blaine. He's been getting information from HR and putting it in there underneath the human resources section. There's always a lot happening in human resources. And most recently, I would say there is a lot more happening internally. We've seen a lot more internal movement of people accepting promotions or transfers, and then us filling those positions with somebody else who's internal. So on the left-hand side, there was the June 17th workshop. Since then, we've had a lot of changes already. We've welcomed Jay Lovelady as our program assistant. He will eventually be working with the senior center, but right now we're using him for the CARES program. Stephanie was at our utilities office, and she has moved into our accounts payable payroll position. because Amy, who was in payroll, has moved over to Public Works. And Sunny, who started employment yesterday, she's actually our replacement for Stephanie. And then we also have an internal transfer. We had an opening in our Parks Division at Public Works, and Brian Rivers from our Storm Drain Wastewater Collections Division at Public Works is going to transfer over there. So a lot of movement is happening all the time with human resources, and we try to track it as much as we can. And that's where I'm going to go back to showing you what NeoGov is doing for us. Okay, so going on to the next slide. This is the old recruitment plan that I would normally use and refer to for whenever we have a job opening. So at any time if somebody vacates a position or there's a new budgeted position, we would look at what is the recruitment plan for developing what we want in that position, the job description, the advertising, the interview questions, what is the interview panel going to look like? And then we would kind of set out the timeline as to when we expect to get candidates and when we expect to fill that position. So this is the old process that I would always kind of fall back on, is the paper way. And then if you go to the next slide, I'll kind of give you a view of what NeoGov's been doing for us. So on the left-hand side where it says requisitions, these are our staffing requisitions. So anytime there's a new position or a vacant position, it has to go through a process of making sure we review the job description, we make sure there's the budget still available for that position, and there's usually multiple approvals to make sure that everybody who needs to know knows that this position is now available and is going to go open for recruitment, whether internally or externally. So on that left-hand side, you can see that we have a requisition number for every position, and you can see the status might say filled or opened or approved. So it keeps a nice colorful tracking for us. And then over on the right-hand side, it's really nice because it tells us the approval, how many people, 0 out of 5 or 2 out of 5, have approved that requisition and where it's at in the process. Once the requisition does get approved, then we go over to the right-hand side and HR sets up the whole entire recruitment plan electronically. So we set up all of the different advertising that we may need to do. We add in any tasks that we might want to assign to myself or Kim to make sure we stay on track. We can put in notes that are specific to that job and that recruitment, and also add any type of files that we might need to refer back to. When we first started using NeoGov, we were attaching a lot of paper files, and now we've slowly gotten away from those paper files because we're doing more and more electronically, which has been really, really nice. So this tracks it every step of the way, and it gives us a really nice printout whenever we need it. I wanted to share some screenshots with you, and then there's some more on the next slide. So once we do get it ready to go out for opening and advertising, what's really great about government jobs is that it allows us to customize each recruitment. Each recruitment, we can specifically say what pictures we want to have included. We can put links. We can change the format of the job description to make it more attractive. Depending on the level of the position, depending on whether it's going internally just to employees or externally to the public, there's different things that we want to make sure is being seen or being highlighted. So government jobs has been really great at making this easy for us to make it attractive. Okay, next slide. So then we get all the applications coming in. And we have this little screenshot over here on the left-hand side, evaluation steps. So we set up all of the steps throughout the process, and depending on how many steps there are, it might be a pretty long process. But it always starts with application received, and then the second step is always reviewing the minimum and desired qualifications, which is education, experience, certifications, and licenses. So we do the first 2 steps in HR, and then we usually go to step 3, which is the panel review. A group of people who have an interest in this position, who know about the needs of this position, and they're given some rating guidelines. They're kind of asked, if you look at these candidates and you were to score them 1, 2, 3, or 4 or 5 stars, here are some guidelines to follow. Provide us what your score is. And what happens is the system gives us an average of all of those compiled scores. And it kind of tells us, okay, based on all those people that you had rate that candidate or these candidates, these are the ones that pass in green. These are the ones that fail. And that's kind of based on an average score. So if everybody's getting 5 stars and people are only rating somebody as a 2-star or 3-star, then they may fall down below average. And if somebody's getting rated 3, 4, or 5 stars, they're probably going to go above average. And then what happens is HR goes to that panel and says, okay, all of these people were above average. Where's your cutoff limit? Is it 100%, 80%, 70%, or is it a number of candidates that you determine that you want to interview, the top 4, the top 5? And we kind of have those discussions and look at those scores. And then it gives us that visual circle down at the bottom. So then we start to move these candidates through this process. So they've been reviewed, they get referred, we start to interview them. And as this is kind of a sample of a lot of candidates that we had for one of our openings because we had so many different places where we were moving them to. So it's really nice because we get this visual and we can move them in and out of these steps and it tracks it for us. So that's the screening and the scoring of when we receive the candidates and how we get to the point of going through the interviews. And then we can go to the next screen. Once a new employee comes on board is a word that we use a lot in human resources to get them on board and then onboard them into their position through orientation and training. What we've got through NeoGov is the ability to create portals and checklists. So for each of our main department areas, we've created a portal to try to enhance that culture of the area that they're going to be working in, to highlight different activities or events that may have happened or be upcoming and important to them. So it's really neat to kind of be able to put special messages specific to those employees in that area. And then we have the ability to do the checklist where they complete their forms directly online through the portal. And it's really nice, user-friendly. Okay, so that was the overview of NeoGov. I believe we can go to the next slide. And now we will get into the leadership staffing changes. Okay, so I figured it would be good to go back a couple months. In December, our city attorney did transition and we began with an interim assignment that will be reassessed before September 1st. And we've been using the assistance of Weed Grafstra. Thank you, Grant Weed. And in February, our Public Works Operation Manager retired after a very long time. And his position was actually reassessed and split into 3 separate employees. So anytime we have a vacancy, we really want to look at all of that position responsibilities and any changes that may have happened or may need to happen before we open up the recruitment. And I think that that's something that we have done very well. We've been very mindful of our vacancies. We've taken the time to assess our needs. And we have set up some interim plans. We have set up some permanent plans. And sometimes it's a combination of both. And that was what we saw with our Public Works Operation Manager. And then in April, we had our opening or our vacancy for the Director of Development Services. And then we recently did that recruitment at the end of June. And we actually did our initial interviews last week and this week. We finished those up today. We were very, very pleased with our level of candidates, very qualified candidates, very exciting candidates. And our panel was excited to get the grouping down from 19 to 5 and now down to the top 3. So we will be moving into a second interview with those top 3 candidates. If everything goes well, we have planned for a hire, hopefully to happen by the mid to end of August. And then in August, we do have upcoming our retirement of our Public Works Operations Manager for Parks. We do have a staffing requisition currently going through the process of approval. So that's our first step where we look at the job description, we confirm the budget, and 5 different people approve that we can move forward with that staffing. Once that staffing requisition gets approved, we plan to open that for an internal only recruitment for a 10-day period. So all of our internal employees will have a chance to apply for that operations manager position. And then we also want to talk about our director of finance position. So if we can go to the next slide. So last week, Tuesday morning, we actually received notice from our finance director that her last day was going to be upcoming on Tuesday, August 4th. That evening, we heard from Mayor Pro Tem Munns that we do have a request that the interim be with a CPA person or firm. And Grant was on the call that night, and there was some discussion about the approval process and the contract approval for staffing that appointed position. So from those requests and all of those actions that happened that day, it's been a really quick turnaround, but we came to give you an update as to what we've been able to bring together for you so far. So these are the interim recommendation options for the mayor that we would like council to review and consider. We reached out to MRSC right away. Thank you so much for that recommendation. MRSC got back to us immediately and provided us with a finance consultant that is available starting in August on Tuesdays and Fridays. It would be through an MRSC contract, which we would actually use our city professional service agreement. The cost would be $250 per hour plus expenses. This finance consultant from MRSC is actually somebody who's very familiar with our city and with our financial statements. He actually facilitated our February 1st, 2020 council retreat on fiscal planning. So talking to MRSC and talking about our needs for the interim timeframe, option number 1, I think would be a really great fit. There's also option number 2, which would be an independent CPA. There is a recommendation that we've been given from MRSC. This would be a non-MRSC contract. This would be an independent contract with an independent CPA individual. She is available starting in August as well, full-time as needed. Her cost is $160 per hour plus expenses. She has acted as an interim and also performed contract work for multiple Washington cities. So she is also an option for us to consider. I did reach out to Moss Adams firm, which is also a recommended firm that we heard about through council and also from MRSC. I have completed their form for their request for services. They request a form to be completed with a scope. And I am currently waiting for a response on their availability and cost. And I do not have that for you yet. I apologize. It's been a very quick turnaround, but I'm hoping to have that information before the end of the week. The other option that you have heard about and that we discussed previously with our other leadership positions is the internal employee interim assignment. So from those 4 options, we would like to hear from you, open it up for discussion. But I would like to recommend, if possible, for the next slide, that if you're interested in option number 1, I would be prepared to come back to council for the July 22nd meeting. Well, it's a council workshop, I apologize, with that contract for approval. I would also like for council to maybe talk about the director recruitment permanent, because interim is great, but I don't know how long interim we want to go. We can go 1 month, 3 months, 6 months. I think that it would be beneficial to start the approval process, which would be the staffing requisition for the finance director recruitment to begin possibly in August. So this is kind of a timeline that I set out just thinking about HR recruitment. I also hesitate to get too late into the year because then we get into the holidays and recruitment can get a little bit difficult with all of the holidays. So with all of that information, the next slide is to open it up for questions and discussion, anything that I can answer for you.
So, can you hear me? Emma, the one thing I don't know whether they heard, I think you said it, not sure, but the idea or the number 1 that you had, that consultant is a CPA?
Yes, he is. That is correct.
Okay, right. Okay, looks like we have, I think first up was Councillor Wassinger.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Emma, for all of that great information. Yes, I feel really good and comfortable with the timeline. I agree. I would like to see us get started with the recruitment process that you have for filling the vacancy. And I also feel really comfortable having an MRSC contract or even a full-time contract in the interim for a month or two, just to have the eyes, just to have someone, really experienced and knowledgeable. And it sounds like that they are, to just keep a track, keep an eye, keep us informed to make sure that we're staying, Patricia did such a great job keeping all of our finances in line and great audits. And I just want to make sure that just in this interim that we keep that rolling. And so I feel comfortable and thankful that we have some really good options for CPAs and people that have a lot of experience with municipality finance and government finance. So thank you for putting all that together. I appreciate it. And I would support the MRSC option 1 or option 2. I'd love to hear what everybody else thinks. But thank you for putting that together.
Thank you.
Councillor Servadius.
Couple of thoughts. I'm intrigued. Well, the first one was intriguing, but with only 2 days a week, that was where I kind of stopped. If we're going into budget season and with all of the oversight of the CARES grant, getting those monies out and then tracking that process, is that person or persons only available 2 days a week, or why would they not be available more?
Yes, that is correct. Currently, right now for the month of August, they would only be available for 2 days a week due to another contract. And then we would be able to discuss if we needed to extend into September.
So, will we see names behind these possible positions or appointments?
Yes, I was kind of hoping to hold the names until the contract came forward. But yes, we could release those if need be.
I'm just curious, once again, if it's somebody that's very qualified, then 2 days might get it done, but I'm hesitant to think that 2 days a week, and maybe they can commit to more after the month of August, but that to me is concerning because we should be knee deep in budget season at that point. The other statement that you made is looking at starting recruitment in August. Why wouldn't we start recruitment right now?
Sure. I would be more than happy to start that process. I wanted to make sure that we were on track with council's wants and needs and any requests that were coming forward from council.
Okay, so I'll hear what my peers have to say. Like I said, my concern would be I would want someone full-time. We've got a small window here to transition with Patricia. So if we can get somebody in there full-time in an interim position, that would help. And like I said, I would go out to recruitment right away because it could take some time to fill that, to find a qualified candidate. And then they're going to be knee deep in budget season with us. So that's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you.
So Councillor Servadius asked about the name, and I don't know why we can't. It's Mike Bailey. The fellow that was at our retreat. So that's who we're talking to. And he's agreed to come here. So anyway, that's the name there. And we do have the CPA name that he suggested for the second option. I think he works with her too. So, Councillor Wassinger?
I'm sorry, I left my hand up. I'll take that down.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay. Councillor Mack?
Okay. Any other questions?
Councillor Mack has a question.
Okay.
Can you hear us? There.
Thank you, Mayor. And thank you, Alma, for putting all this in front of us. I too am a little bit concerned, as Councilmember Servadius said, with a short window with Patricia leaving. And I think we would want to start the process right away. And yes, I think all the names should be brought forth, that type of thing, if we want to do our own independent research. I'm a little bit nervous about MRSC, so I would not be in favor of that. I would prefer that the city go with an independent, highly qualified, trained CPA that, but is still experienced in municipality. And I would support option number 2 for and go in that direction. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, Councillor Wiesner.
Thank you, Mayor. I've got to tell you, after going through this process that we've been going through for the Development Services Director and working with this NeoGov program, you know, I think I have a little different thought on this than I maybe did it just even as little as a couple of weeks ago. You know, the reality is from that process, we got a ton of fairly high level quality candidates from around the country. And we ended up with a lot also from local high quality candidates, folks that we may have not ever thought about. And I was really surprised when going through the interviewing process at the level of these folks that we possibly as a city have the opportunity of gaining. And the reality is that process has gone, now that we started it fairly quickly, from the time we advertised, and maybe Emma can help me with this, from the time we advertised till we got applications, till we've interviewed, and now we're narrowing it down to a second set of interviews, and probably not far off from a hire. What's that time frame been, Emma?
So we opened it on June 23rd. It closed last week on the 7th. And so we're 7 days out from it closing.
So we're going to have less than a 60-day time frame from an applicant, and several of the applicants, you know, a couple of weeks, you know, they were fairly readily available. So I guess my concern is how much of a learning curve anybody outside of anybody who hasn't been into our books already, you know, how much of a learning curve, how many days is it going to take for somebody to walk into the office, come familiar with our systems, come familiar with our staff, sit down, speak with them, and then actually then start processing through whatever it is we're going to have them process, which I assume, you know, we're not going to have them doing everything, you know, obviously, unless we hire somebody full-time, anybody we bring in part-time is not going to be doing Patricia's job. What I assume they're going to be doing is following behind some staff members who are going to be picking up the slack. I mean, it'd be literally impossible to think that we're going to take somebody who's working 40, 50 hours a week and get that job done in 2 days. So I guess that's the problem I have with the MSRC thing. You know, what job is it they're actually going to perform and be able to do in that 2 days? And isn't that really going to be relying upon our staff, and we're just going to really kind of having them come behind our staff? Well, maybe can't we do that with a consultant that's available to our staff to assist our staff with questions and et cetera, more so than putting them into the position of being our finance director and trying to fill a 40-hour position with 16 hours a week. The other side, option two, you know, hiring somebody full time. I guess my question is the interviewing process, the hiring process, the decision process, the application process, the getting together the contract process. All of that process is going to take time, and you know, we could be ending up here with hiring and going through that process for somebody for a month, for 30 days, to have them come in and you know, gosh, I'm a pretty quick learner, right? But the learning curve, it seems like, with this whole thing is going to take a while, and so what are we really going to get out of that? Maybe a couple of weeks of work. So those are my concerns, and again, it's based upon my surprise and my fortune to be involved in this whole development services search. Just really shocked at, you know, we don't know what's out there until we put it out there, and when we put it out there, we may be really, really happily surprised, and we may find that what we're talking about here is filling a 2-week void. I'm also just going to say one last thing. You know, we obviously have a lot of talented people in that department. There's some people who've been there for quite some time and are intimately knowledgeable with the goings on of the city on a day-to-day basis. Now, certainly if the rest of council feels as though there needs to be some sort of oversight of that or some sort of assistance with that, maybe we need to talk with those folks a little bit first and see what areas they need assistance and oversight with, to make sure that we know, again, what we're interviewing for, what we're hiring for. Obviously, again, finding a qualified CPA, looking at that resume, looking at that process, picking that person and hiring that person is not going to be an overnight ordeal. So, yeah, I'd certainly caution, and I think I'd rather put my time and effort into finding a high quality replacement, because I do think there are folks out there in the world, and after going through this NeoGov process and looking at the quality of those folks and seeing how the process vets itself, I mean, it really does have the cream rise to the top fairly quickly. And it really does describe the job positions well, because the reality is the ratings that we have done and how this stuff is matched up after going through the first set of interviews was almost 100% spot on. And the system got us there pretty quickly. So I just want to share that with the rest of council. It was certainly an eye opener for me, and I guess I want to caution us on the fact that what we may be asking for just maybe on the surface looks like what we need to do, but the reality is it doesn't make a lot of sense, and maybe just getting the help and guidance that we need for the quality staff we have in the interim would make more sense. And that wouldn't necessarily mean, somebody 2 days a week or 4 days a week or 5 days a week, maybe that's 1 day a week. We are talking about somewhere between a $1,300 a day and a $2,000 a day expense. And on this deal, it's not about the money, because when we're protecting the money, right? It's worth spending the money. I mean, we watch the pennies and the dollars will watch themselves, right? But at the same, so I don't want to belittle that, but at the same time, I want to make sure that we're actually accomplishing something and not doing something just to do it. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Wiesner. Mayor Pro Tem.
Thank you, Mayor. I'm going to have to disagree with Councilman Wiesner. Were you here when Tara Gallagher was hired as the interim police chief? He was a retired police chief from Port Angeles. He came in hitting the road running. When he was here 3 days, he realized that there were some big staff inefficiencies and stuff like that. So you have the right person. We need a CPA. The main thing is because of internal control, to be able to look over all the puzzle pieces and make sure that the hands that are touching the money are doing the accounting, that there is an oversight to it. I'll tell you, Mike Bailey has probably taught every course and written the books. If you look at his biography, there is no way, whether he gives you 1 day, 2 days, or 5 days, he would not commit unless he knew he could do it and make a difference. And he will not need any warm-up. He just needs to learn people's names and who's doing what, especially with the budget season. If he's recommending a consultant with a CPA that has already indicated she could do 5 days a week, then she ought to be darn good. And he knows her qualifications. So if either one of them are available, we would be very lucky to have either one. But you need someone that can have the vision to look over at the pieces and know how they should fit together. The city has worked too hard to pull themselves out to have a good, strong reserve, to have the GASB system so that the auditors love how everything is accountable. You can't just, and there isn't anyone on staff that can put all those pieces together. You need to have someone to be able to do that. So I would go with option 1 or option 2, and both of them have a CPA, which means they have the knowledge, they have the certificate, they have the legal knowledge. Is going to keep us safe pretty much. So I cannot do anyone internally for this job. And you're not going to have to wait for them 2 weeks to catch up, I'm afraid, Mr. Wiesner. They are going to know their business and they're going to hit it running. They just need to learn names. Thank you.
Councillor Wassinger.
Thank you. Yes, I would agree with Councilmember Munns. You know, I would definitely feel more comfortable with option 1 or 2. And for me, it isn't, like Councilmember Munns said, it's more about having a CPA, somebody that sounds like these two candidates really know municipal finance, just to have that oversight, knowledge, and I would maybe attest this to Mr. Weed. We have a contract just to help us with our attorney work, our legal department. We're not trying to fill a position permanently with this temporary oversight and contract. So I would hope that it would not take, you know, a long time to sign a contract, and sounds like we have some really good candidates that we would all agree would do a good job. And I also would agree with starting that search, like Mr. Wiesner said, to start the process that we're going through now with our other development services position, to get that started now, because the ultimate goal is to find a permanent full-time finance director. That is my hope. That is my ultimate goal, is to find someone really qualified for that position. And it sounds like this process, hopefully we will get that same luck that we're having now and get some really good candidates. But just in the meantime, for me, what I envision maybe is not someone that's, you know, in that, my thinking is this person's going to be in the role just to be an oversight, just to answer questions, look at our finances, help us with this budget process. If it does take longer and we need them, you know, someone that is very knowledgeable with that, like Councilmember Servati said, we're coming into a really crucial time with the finance department and budgeting. So we, you know, hopefully it won't take long. Like Mr. Wiesner said, we can get this process going and find somebody permanent. That's the ultimate goal. But in the meantime, I definitely support having a CPA. I've worked in the world. It's tough, and there's a lot of regulations. I've never worked in municipal finance, but I've worked in the private sector, and it is a tough job, and it's an important job. So I really would feel more comfortable. I like option 1 and 2. I'm okay with either one. But I do think that we need someone in the interim to get a contract going, just till we can fill the position. So that's my thinking. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Councillor Wassinger. Councillor Hizon is next.
Thank you, Mayor. Emma, thank you for the overview of the NeoGov, and thank you, Councillor Wiesner, for your input in terms of how that works, you know, internally when it comes to reviewing applicants and hiring. So I'm comfortable having that knowledge and that feedback in terms of a long-term hire. But I want to remind my fellow council members that before we get too excited about an interim appointment and put a bunch of work into it, interim appointments the mayor does those, and we technically don't have any say over that. So the mayor will appoint who he's going to appoint in the interim, but then when it comes to actually hiring a full-time person, that's when we will have an opportunity to review and approve a final hire. So all the feedback is great. Emma, thank you for providing all of that information to us. And thank you, Mayor, for giving us the opportunity to weigh in when theoretically you didn't really have to, but it's nice to be able to have that info and be able to chime in and you know, be in the loop. I really appreciate that as a council person. So just want to say thanks, and I look forward to reviewing some final applications for a full-time person. So thanks, Emma. Keep up the good work.
Thank you, Councillor Hizon. Mayor Pro Tem.
Thank you, Mayor. So before you advertise, could you please send out to council what the description is for the job? Instead of just saying, hey, we're advertising, and then what the structure will be for interviewing this person. I believe when Doug Merriman was hired, we actually had two different divided teams, and one worked with admin and leadership and things like that, and the other one worked with kind of the nuts and bolts to kind of have questions so that he had to show he knew what he knew how to do. I believe Wendy was on that team. I don't know who else. I was not on council at that time, but this is 90% of our budget has to do with payroll. And so we've also got our finances and stuff. So we, I think, need to spend more time being sure and maybe advertise that it will be open until filled. I know in years past, sometimes we've waited 3 months before we had enough people apply. So I don't know. But I just think it would be helpful and nice to know what our description is and then what we think the interview structure might be for that on this position. So thank you.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. Councilor Servadius.
Just circling back on the first option there of Mike Bailey, if that name's not familiar, he did our last fall, our budget retreat. And I've been through several of his courses on finance. And possibly, I don't know if Redmond was his last city that he was the finance director at, but he spent a decent amount of time there. But just in going through some of his courses and retreats, you know, he constantly reviews. That's one of the things he does is just reviews budgets for cities. And he often talks about those and gives little excerpts in his classes that he does. So while that name comes with a price tag, and I still have the concern about 2 days a week, now that I know that name, you know, I would be supportive of option one as an interim solution, just because I know the CV of the guy and his background. So, you know, I was pleased, Mayor, to hear that name because I know that he knows his stuff and he's very well seasoned in the industry. So very sharp individual. But I'd also still, like I said, the full-time person might be, I don't know if they'd apply the $160 an hour person or not. But I just wanted to I guess, put in a plug for Mike Bailey, having witnessed his courses and his work, but still want to keep the hammer down on making sure that this is advertised far and wide, and we probably don't delay in doing that. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Servadius. Councilor Hizon, your hand is still up, or?
My bad, sorry.
Oh, okay, okay. Anyone else? Okay, seeing no other hands then at this point, I think we've got our marching orders there pretty much. And if there is no other business, I guess special meeting, there probably need to be advertised unless somebody's got any other comments or closing statements, we'll just adjourn. Okay? I'll accept them. How about a motion to adjourn? Yes, Mayor Pro Tem.
You're still muted, Mayor Pro Tem.
There you go.
We've had a lot of vacancy. When are we going to start advertising for a full-time attorney?
We've got, that was talked about earlier, and we've got until September, I think, on that. So we'll let you know. We don't have that, we don't have a date at this point.
Okay, and as far as Hank Neidham's position, he is out of here on the 1st of August? That's his last day?
Emma?
He's actually here until the end of August.
Oh, good. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. I have concerns with his job trying to hire within. As Hank puts it, he grew with the job from it being about this big to this big. We just added 75 acres for a new regional park. He also is still not opposed, besides managing it, renting the parks for fields for different little leagues and softballs and golf frisbee and football teams and soccer teams. You got to negotiate, be able to negotiate with all those personalities. Plus you have to know your plants, how the seasons go, and he will pick up and go out with a backhoe and do the work. So this is not a simple job, and I can bet money on it that we do not have anyone internally that can take Hank's place. I don't think there is anyone, but it is a huge asset for our city, and I don't want to see it deteriorate. So I would like to see how you think you might reorganize this or not. I feel like because of the equipment that they need and things like that, that it should stay with Public Works, but that's open for discussion. But I'm sorry, I'm opposed to hearing that you just want an interim to apply for his position for that job. We have what, 2 people right now that work in parks? I would like to see their resumes if there's someone else in water or down in planning or whatever, to see that might take us. But that is a huge asset for the city and for our community. It is a city's legacy, what we have now invested in parks. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. Councilor Mack.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. And thank you, Mayor Pro Tem Munns. Mayor Pro Tem Munns has a very good point, folks. You got a huge investment in these parks. I'm a big parks guy. That's what really impressed my wife and I over 30 years ago when we came to this community. And the people in have done a great job. And as Mayor Pro Tem pointed out, you have to have, that individual has to have the ability to wear many hats, interact with all different types of people, have somewhat of how business works, to facilitate, know how to schedule things, and be very efficient with their time and everybody else's time to make the most of our parks and keep them, or I should say, help keep them top notch. So again, let's be careful with all this investment that we have, in addition to future investment with these new parks, and take the proper time, as we're doing in the other departments, to get the right individual to keep us moving forward in the right direction. Thank you again.
Thank you, Councilor Mack. I think we've got Public Works staff here, and so I'm sure that we've heard that well, and we may be asking for some additional help from council as we move forward to plan there. And unless Public Works would want to say anything at this point, I can tell you that we know that Mr. Needham is going to be very hard to replace.
She's on.
And Kathy, I see you've, I knew you were listening. Don't know whether you want to.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. I do believe that there are a few qualified individuals within the organization that would like to apply. And we can confirm that with them next week when we put it out. I don't know, if we need to do a full 7 days, but maybe just 1 week, and then we'll know who's on that list. But there are some people that I would feel comfortable with. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Kathy. Any other input or business? Well, thank you for your time. I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
Got a motion and a second to adjourn. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Looks like we are adjourned. Thank you very much for your time. And thank you out there, public.